A red-hot comet streaks through the upper atmosphere. It tears across the night sky, alighting the continents below in its blood-red glow. Hurtling back towards the surface, the comet erupts like a bomb when it collides with solid land. From within the crater, molten rock and ash hiss and throw up dangerous gases into the air. Slowly but surely, a gargantuan green hand reaches up out of the impact site. Hours later, deep into the mountains of Europe, huge tremors can be felt, and the undead citizens of an ancient city know that something humongous draws closer with each footstep. Fanged guards and red-eyed operatives watch the forest edge, preparing for the arrival of the being they know has landed in their lands. The Hulk had smashed his way through every town, barracks, and fort in his path so far, and the remaining forces grew nervous at his approach. "Calm yourself," one vampiric general told his underling. "If our mission fails, and it likely will, then we are dead already. Worrying about it gains nothing." "You can't negotiate with an animal," the lesser vampire responded. "Oh, I don't know," his commander told him, listening as the deafening footsteps grew even louder. At that moment, the Hulk in all his raging glory and terror charged out of the deep mountain woods. He leapt forth towards the vampires, wielding a horrible ancient mallet over his head. His weapon seemed to be empowering the Hulk with some sort of magical essence, increasing the size and strength even further than before. "He looks like a perfectly reasonable fellow to me," the vampire said coolly as he watched the Hulk charge from the tree line. "Greetings, Hulk," the envoy offered politely as the glowing green giant stared down at them. "We don't know what dire task propels your destructive trek, but I've been instructed to assure you the Vampire Nation has no quarrel with you. Furthermore, we invite you to cross our lands unhindered." The ghastly servant of Dracula smiled up at the empowered Hulk with dead eyes. "What say you, Hulk?"
"I say, smash!"
Hulk erupted as he swung his magic hammer around, decapitating the vampire messenger in one swift and mighty blow. Without wasting a moment, Hulk leapt at the rest of the vampire firing squad, their bullets bouncing off of Hulk's skin and armor ineffectively. When the Hulk landed amidst the battalion, the force of his hammer striking the ground ended the fight before it had even begun, sending the vampires flying across the forest and scrambling for cover. In the shadows of the forest, watching from afar, a communications outfit watched the battle unfold, hoping to send their findings back to their undead king.
"We do not have the feed, Captain Luna. What are you saying?"
barked Mission Control. "A massacre," the captain reported back, watching the Hulk rip through an entire vampire battalion with ease. In the Castle Dracula war room, one of the first vampire lieutenants offers, "Damn, those were good men. What a waste." "They were good men, Legate," Lord Dracula answers. "But they gave their lives confirming vital information. We needed to know if we could broker a deal. Furthermore, we needed immediate optics on our opponent." It was clear that Dracula understood the power and weight of the Hulk and was not about to be caught underestimating the Green Goliath. "I can field 8,000 men in 2 hours. All seasoned Krieger shock troopers," Legate informs his king, but a younger man interrupts the commander's report. "Father, the Hulk is a nasty customer, even under normal circumstances." On screen, the faces of the Thing, the Juggernaut, and the Absorbing Man appear, each seemingly also overtaken with the strange potent magic that the Hulk now wields. "That brings the total number of hammer wielders up to 7, now including the Hulk," Legate analyzed. Dracula's son Janus continued. "My info crushers have cross-referenced every way imaginable. The only thing they have in common are the hammers and the muscle to use them. Something or someone has turned them loose on the world, and so far, nobody can stop them." Dracula stood, his undying pale face shining in the candlelight. "Gentlemen, let's narrow our focus to one impossible task at a time. The world's heroes are occupied with the other hammer wielders. The Hulk has landed in our backyard. He is our problem." Dracula's eyes turned red and soulless as he gave an order to his war council, so that each man understood that failure meant certain death. "We will find a way to stop him," Dracula commanded. The first line of defense Dracula decreed would be the Charnipatra, vampiric bat-like humanoids. Screeching, the monsters flew into combat, ready to keep the Hulk busy while Dracula schemed. "I want every moment of the encounter captured for analysis," Dracula ordered. As quickly as they entered combat with the Hulk, the Charnipatra were defeated. Horde after horde piled in to meet the Hulk, and like gnats, they were all swatted away. It seemed the magic hammer the Hulk was using to juice up his strength was nothing to scoff at.
The Charnipator team has been decimated.
The command ship radioed back to the war room. But as they watched, the Hulk lifted boulders in his massive fists and hurled them like shrapnel at the onlookers. Their engines were torn and brutalized, and the Jade Giant smiled as he watched the aircraft spiral towards the trees below. Back at Castle Dracula, the main vamp himself was still adjusting to his new plight when a new headache arrived at his door. Suddenly, His Royal Highness's guards were taken out in a flurry of precision strikes. The Lord of Vampires isn't actually worried, is he? A voice rang out in the fray as Dracula's goons were dispatched. A little thing like the Hulk wanders through your empire and you go all to pieces. The voice cut at Dracula, who scoffed. Raizo Kodo. Dracula named his unwelcome guest. But I thought he'd been banished after the... Janus started, but he quickly bumped into the chest of another intruder.
Watch where you're going, pretty boy,
a gruff voice warned. Standing before Dracula and his progeny were 5 rough and tumble-looking vampires who seemed to be under Raizo's command. If Raizo and his elusive clan, the Forgiven, had come for a fight, you'd already be bleeding. Dracula ordered his forces to stand down. I did come to fight, Raizo told the vampire king. At your side. Dracula glared down at Raizo and his team of outcasts. You always failed in respect and obedience, Raizo, Dracula scolded. This is Castle Dracula. I rule here. One of Raizo's soldiers, Visigoth, couldn't hold in his temper.
You old fool,
he raged.
We've come to help before the world is destroyed.
I'll come find you in your cell, should I wish any more of your advice, Dracula said before turning away and ordering the 6 vampires to be imprisoned. In short order, Raizo and the Forgiven were behind bars, though it was clear that they were far more powerful than any of the puny vampires sent to guard them. Raizo struggled to keep his soldiers in check, but succeeded in convincing them to play the long game, at least for the time being. A word with you, father. Dracula all but ignored his son's words. I will deal with Raizo soon enough. In the meantime, we must contrive to battle an impossible foe, Dracula pronounced as he stared into the remnants of the sunset. Even if we haven't figured out yet how to stop him, there may be a way to put something in his way to slow him down. Janus considered these words carefully. I think I see, father. It takes a monster to fight a monster. Dracula smirked at his son's naivety as they both watched dozens of planes carrying all manner of beast and brute depart towards the Hulk. Dracula wouldn't send his champions to test the Hulk one by one. He would drown the Jade Giant in an army of monsters until he figured out a way to stop the Hulk permanently. In the wreckage of the downed aircraft, a figure stumbles out of the smoke. Team decimated, Captain Luna manages to report through coughs. Moments earlier, she had witnessed almost all of Dracula's monster army be single-handedly taken out by the Hulk. Hearing a noise, she darts to attention, managing to dodge the tentacles of an incoming beast. I hate working with these monsters, she says aloud as she once more dives into the shadows of the forest. Dispatch, do you copy? She radios in. I need to know if we still have the satellite uplink. A signal, shaky but still operational, cuts through the static of her transmitter.
Glad to have you back on the job, Captain.
It says then,
we need to know if the Hulk's engaged the bait we've set for him. What's the status?
Dashing through the woods towards the sound of the fight, Captain Luna takes out her camera recorder and relays all the action. That's affirmative, dispatch, she says. He's engaging the hell out of them. In the clearing, the Hulk continued to wipe the floor with the most powerful and dangerous monsters that Dracula could find. Nothing and no one, it seemed, could even possibly hope to stand in the way of this newly empowered Hulk. Dracula and his associates watched Captain Luna's feed, taking in every moment of the battle and searching desperately for any weak spots they could exploit. If we don't find an answer soon, he'll destroy us all, Dracula said as Hulk bellowed a hearty war cry, looking up to see the serpentine face of a dragon man.
You're a big fella,
Hulk said as he jumped towards his newest challenger. Bringing his mighty hammer down, the Hulk caved the dragon's skull in with one swing.
But you're still puny to me,
he called as he dispatched another of Dracula's monsters with ease. Inside the castle, Dracula's allies were growing worried. All but Raizo Kodo had already begun to despair. I need every scrap of data, every image, every readout, Raizo snapped at Dracula's underlings. Do as he says, the master commanded. Dracula's inner circle began huddling around the information they had accrued. They knew that many hammers had dropped from the sky in the past few days and that each had activated on contact with an individual. That's significant, Raizo pointed out. It means that each hammer was meant specifically for the wielder. Dracula leveled his undead gaze at Raizo. But how to use the information? How to stall the Hulk while the legate gathers his forces? Raizo smiled. My team can buy us the time. I've trained them myself. Dracula turned away from the young renegade.
Yes, send your team. If we can't figure out a way to stop the Hulk,
He said.
none of us will be here tomorrow anyway.
And so the Forgiven were dispatched to stop the rampaging Hulk from reaching Castle Dracula.
There he is!
One of them shouted, seeing the shadow of the Hulk leaping up in front of the full moon.
And there he goes.
Visigoth whispered as the shadow grew closer, revealing the full might and horror of the Hulk to the Forgiven for the first time. The Jade Giant hit the ground like a meteor, instantly decimating the town center. By the time the Goliath had stood, nearly half the town was already up in flames. The Forgiven regrouped, unsure of how to even approach an enemy of this magnitude. Instantly, the Forgiven set out to evacuate the village. Inca revealed her true vampire form to the onlookers and caused a mass hysteria that cleared out the village within minutes. Meanwhile, the Forgiven quickshot charged into a church, dangerous ground for vampire kind, to save a priest as the building burned. But even as some of the Forgiven worked to keep the villagers safe, the Hulk was making quick work of Visigoth, the group's muscle.
Those Norse markings on your hammer bring back a lot of memories.
Visigoth told the Hulk, who began to speak in an ancient, long-lost language.
Protective spells, maybe. Probably the only thing keeping your teeth in your head after kissing my mace.
Visigoth taunted as another swing of his mace cracked Hulk in the jaw. The Hulk looked up grinning.
Now it's Hulk's turn,
He rumbled. With one swing, Hulk sent Visigoth hurtling through the buildings of the town, slamming mercilessly into a far wall, nearly cracking the vampire's spine in two. As Visigoth tried to stand, the bell tower he had impacted began to crumble and collapse. Looking up at the last moment, Visigoth didn't even have time to scream before the stone and rubble buried him alive. Meanwhile, Raizo Kodo was beginning to make enemies back at Dracula's keep. Dracula's military advisor began berating Raizo out of fear that he was wasting time. Raizo responded without word, whipping his arm out and breaking the lieutenant's finger with ease. The man screamed and turned to his king.
No, Dracula, did you see that?
He begged, but Dracula merely smirked at the show of force.
I suggest you let the man concentrate,
he advised coolly. With Visigoth down, Raizo's right-hand woman, Night Eyes, stood up to face the green monster. As Hulk slammed his fists into the street, Night Eyes gracefully dodged out of the way. Fortunately, I am nimble, she said simply, hurtling over the Hulk's next charge with a similar ease. Such a strong hunter as you may underestimate the value of speed and... But she was cut off when one of Hulk's fists grabbed her leg and hurled her across the square. Night Eyes coughed as she watched the Hulk approach to finish her. A small rock collided with the Hulk's thick skull. Standing to the side was Ghostblade, who drew Hulk's wrath so as to save Night Eyes from a swift but painful demise. Hulk roared and lashed out at Ghostblade, but the Goliath's fist went right through the vampire. Difficult to smash the intangible, isn't it? Ghostblade chuckled, but his demeanor went from relaxed to fearful as the Hulk began inhaling with his mighty lungs. When Hulk released the air from his lungs with the speed of torrential winds, Ghostblade was thrown from the spot and the Forgiven had all but been beaten by the Jade Giant.
We need more time to prepare.
Dracula's advisors once again impressed upon him as the war room grew more and more anxious. The Hulk could arrive at any moment, they knew, and Raizo had yet to determine a single weak spot at which to strike the monster. You must listen to me, the legate begged Dracula. The Hulk is like no other foe. Anything less than our full strength is a waste of blood. Wordlessly, Raizo rose from his meditation. Gentlemen, Dracula silenced the room. I believe Raizo Kodo has something to say. Raizo walked straight up to the Vampire King. We have been going about this all wrong. This battle can't be won by any force we can muster. There is no weapon, no military maneuver that can defeat the Hulk. This is beyond our capabilities, he announced and then proceeded to exit the chamber. Dracula stared as Raizo left in abject defeat.
Let him go,
Dracula ordered as his commanders nearly rioted.
Legate, you have 1 hour to arm every available vampire who can hold a weapon, and then the vampire nation goes to war,
he commanded. After leaving Dracula's council, Raizo hurried to the side of his team. Raizo! Inca called as he approached.
Inca, I need you to come with me. Now,
Raizo said. Without question, Inca leaped into the jet. Raizo, what do you want me to do? Quickshot asked for the rest of the Forgiven. Stall the Hulk, Raizo ordered. Any way you can. We need every second. And with that, Raizo and Inca flew off. Dracula looked out at his legions and legions of assembled vampire soldiers.
This is only a fraction of our great army, but it will have to be enough,
the Vampire King said.
We need to pick our spot. Now would be a good time for some intel. Janice, contact Raizo's team. Tell them to report in, if they're still alive.
Back in the village, the Hulk hadn't slowed down one iota in his hours of rampaging. "This is no place to loiter, Night Eyes," Ghostblade joked as he picked up his teammate and carried her to safety. As they ran, the town crumbled around them. Standing in the dust was a huge silhouette of the Hulk.
"Hulk will smash the world!"
The creature roared in glee. Finally, the Forgiven regrouped. "Your team leader when Rizo's gone, Night Eyes," Visigoth told the injured vampire. "What do you want us to do?" "Our jobs," Night Eyes responded without any hesitation. "We got bruised a little, but nobody said we're off the hook." Meanwhile, Dracula had decided to lure the Hulk to a nearby fortress named St. Sebastian. He orders his advisors to tell the city that the Hulk is on his way. "That will cause a panic," Janice warned. "Exactly," Dracula smiled. "Hulk will smell the fear, and it will draw him like a magnet." Dracula turned to address his loyal subjects. Powerfully, he ordered them to waste no time and march for St. Sebastian at once. "Some of us will not return," he said. "Maybe not any of us. Fight hard. To glory and death," he called, sending up a cheer from the crowd. Janus, the king's son, presented Lord Dracula with his sword. Dracula hefted the jagged blade from its scabbard and held it aloft as he prepared himself to march into the dangers of battle. "It's time, Janus," he told his offspring. "Fetch your sword. Fight at my side. Fight as if there were no tomorrow." As Dracula inspired his forces, the Forgiven were executing the best plan they could come up with. Acting as bait, Night Eyes sprinted through the forest as a leaping Hulk chased her with death in his eyes. Night Eyes dodged out from underneath the Hulk's landing and Visigoth bellowed, "Time for a little payback, you ugly bastard! Stay right there!" as he tried to capture the Hulk's attention from a nearby railroad track. Hulk fell for the ruse, leaping up towards Visigoth right as two trains tore down the tracks, both perfectly timed to collide with the Hulk. An explosion ripped through the forest as the two trains charged into each other with the Hulk at the center. The Forgiven thought they might have finally given the Hulk a timeout, but before they can even congratulate themselves, the Green Goliath hurled himself from the fiery wreckage and back into the fray. As Visigoth charged the Hulk once more, Hulk whispered,
"I bring you fear."
And with a whip of his hammer, Visigoth was once more hurtled back into the trees. The Forgiven member landed miles away, at the feet of Lord Dracula and his army. "He's coming," Visigoth managed to say as Dracula looked down on him in disgust. "Good," the king uttered, allowing Visigoth to slump down in the dirt. Within minutes, the Hulk was charging his way through entire legions of vampire warriors. His mighty hammer empowered each and every swing as Hulk ripped through the battalions without so much as breaking a sweat. Leaping forth towards St. Sebastian's walls, Hulk landed with a sonic boom at the foot of the castle. He roared something in Norse up at Dracula, who leaned over his fortress and yelled back at the Hulk. "Bring it on, you dumb green beast," Dracula called down. "Bring that hammer right here." The vampire king dared him. Hulk let out a blood-curdling scream as he leapt towards Dracula. "Fire!" the king yelled, and a net was launched, catching and ensnaring the Hulk midair. Hulk hit the ground with a thud, and Dracula's smile widened. "That's adamantium netting," he said smugly. "You're stuck, friend." But even as he reveled in his victory, a magically empowered green arm ripped through the unbreakable netting. The Hulk, enraged beyond imagination, hurled himself once more at Dracula, who took the full brunt of the Green Goliath's mighty blow. This time, it was Dracula who hit the ground, coughing and addressing the Hulk with far more respect. "Go ahead then, but if you think I'm going to cower..." The Hulk lifted his blood-soaked magic hammer over his head and said,
"I think you will be afraid, little vampire,"
as he prepared to bring his weapon down and reduce the Vampire King to dust and bones. But before Hulk could end Dracula's reign permanently, a jet whirred into view, peppering the Hulk's thick hide with bullets.
"Smash!"
Hulk roared again as he charged towards the vehicle, but what he saw inside stopped him in his tracks. "Wait, Bruce, stop!" yelled Red She-Hulk, also known as Betty Brant, Bruce Banner's wife.
"Betty,"
the Hulk whispered, his eyes growing wide. "I know you're in there, Bruce. The hammer has power over you, but you can fight it," Betty encouraged the Hulk. "I love you, Bruce, and I know you love me." Suddenly, Betty dropped her Hulk form and appeared to Bruce as simply her human self. "I don't fear you," she said, every word piercing Hulk's heart like a knife. "There's no point in fear, because if we can't be together, then my world will end anyway," Betty said. By the time she was done, Hulk was groveling on his knees.
No!
Hulk screamed in anguish. Hulk turned to his hammer, and with tears streaking down his face, he used his might to crush the stone mallet into pieces, ending the enchantment that had overtaken him. When Bruce Banner looked up from the floor, he saw the face of not only Betty Brant, but of Inca, who had used her magic to disguise herself as the person the Hulk would listen to.
And now we end this once and for all,
Dracula said as he raised his blade above his head, but the act of aggression caused the Hulk to emerge once more.
Back off!
The Hulk raged, stopping Dracula's attack where he stood. No longer held by the spell of the hammer, the Hulk hurled himself into the forest.
Lucky for you, I've got more important fights.
The Jade Giant yelled back as he left the scene. The Forgiven, bruised and bloodied, could only watch as Dracula's army collected every scrap of the Hulk's destroyed hammer and carried them back to Castle Dracula.
You and your band of outcasts remain banished, Raizo.
Dracula decreed as he glared at the Forgiven.
You've known me a long time, Raizo Kodo. You know I'm not bluffing. Go now. Don't come back.
The Forgiven waited until Dracula was out of earshot.
What do we do now?
Visigoth asked. We sneak into the castle tonight and steal the hammer back? Quickshot offered. Raizo grinned.
Oh yeah.
The Incredible Hulk held his own against Dracula, but check out what happened when he fought against the very same hammer he was just using.